We are on air. Today is Thursday, August 27th, and this is our weekly meeting to check in on core development and other relevant tasks. Before we get to the agenda, let's go around and have everybody do introductions. In the last meeting, we did this fun thing where the person who was introducing themselves called on the next person to introduce themselves. So let's do that again. Let's start with Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece, as per every week, to see how we can help with issues that come up. Tim?
Thanks, Greg. I'm Tim, St. Paul Tim, in Deerwood, Minnesota. And we just excited about excited and nervous about a deadline coming up here for us. So here to see what we can get into 1.17. We got a few days. Tuin?
Yes, my name is Tuhin and I am from Bangladesh and I am still learning and I'm trying to move Drupal to Backdrop soon.
Nice.
Super,
Tuin.
thanks, Tuin.
Yep.
I'm Nate Lampton. I live in Oakland, California. And yeah, like Tim said, this is the last meeting before Code Freeze. So I'm also excited to see what things we can get in before then, before September 1st. Jen, have you gone yet?
Nope. I'm Jen Lampton, also in Oakland, California. Also very excited about Code Freeze and a potential sprint this weekend. So yeah. All right, before we move on to anything else, I want to thank dbond for porting the cache exclude module. So we've got new contributor application, which is exciting. And in the past week, we've had two new contributed modules, menu link wait and automatic entity link wait, were both released this week. I did add a note here to merge and deploy the pull request for cleaning up the tugboat sandboxes since we've been hitting limits on that. More as just a reminder to ping BW Panda since he's been doing work on our sites. And also there's a note here for the API site thanking BW Panda for all of his work on the new form API reference page. That's a page that's really, really valuable to module developers to try and figure out what your form elements do and what properties are allowed on them. And when he first recommended redoing the page, my brain like exploded. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much work. I think, Tim, you also were commenting on this. I'm like, that's so much work. There's no way we could possibly do that. And he's been plugging forward on this for like the last year and a half. And he's got it to a point now where it's ready to start entering content. So I just wanted to say a huge thanks to all the work that he's been putting in on that. Okay, let's turn it over to Nate to talk about what's been going on in Backdrop Core.
All right. Yeah, we're continuing to plug away, even though 117's Code Freeze is next week. We're still planning, or we're still going through a lot of bug fixes that are going to 116. So of those, let's see, it was brought up just before this meeting that it's becoming increasingly urgent that Backdrop properly support MySQL 8. We have an existing issue for this at 4238. MySQL 8 is now what happens when you do apt install MySQL on Debian or on the latest version of Debian, and it's what happens if you have the latest version of Red Hat or CentOS. So that's becoming more important. The patch that we have there, there's an approach used by Drupal 7 that's also in review right now over on the Drupal.org issue queue. The approach used in this version is slightly different. And I'm not sure if we need to adopt the Drupal 7 approach or if the approach that is used in 4238 will work for Backdrop. So that could use some eyeballs and suggestions and testing. It does at least make it so that you can get past the installer and Backdrop generally works, but there's a lot of test failures that I haven't looked into that could use some examination. So there's definitely some like corners of Backdrop that probably still aren't working. Let's see. Update.php throws an error about install.php and says some confusing messages about the configuration directories. That's issue 3846. It's been marked RTBC, just a real simple fix that separates those messages about the config directories into two separate things. I said there was also a follow-up issue that was created that notifies users if their staging directory isn't set up just all the time. So both of those things sound good. That issue is marked RTBC, so we'll probably be seeing that moved in shortly. Let's see. This site stuck in maintenance mode issue has something to do with when you run updates on modules. Has this seen any activity? This hasn't seen any activity anytime recently, so I probably won't recap it again. The issue is 3956 though, continues to need testing. In the category of things that need testing, issue 2766, restore the pager by date plugin to date module. That has some updates that Indigo Zella added automated tests to that issue, which is great. I think that was kind of one of the holdups here. At this point now, this just needs some additional code review to make sure everything looks fine. I think Doc Wilmot did a substantial amount of testing, checking to make sure that this approach used by Core is compatible with Calendar module, the contrib version. So I think we're all good on testing here. I think that this is now just, it needs some final eyeballs to review the new code additions for tests. So that's great. That would be wonderful to get that one done. Let's see. That feature, I feel like maybe we should bump into 117 because it's adding new functionality. I get that it's probably marked as a bug because it's been missing, you know, since we did the port of date module, but it's also kind of a new feature, something that wasn't there in previous versions of Backdrop, at least, even though it was then Drupal 7. So I don't know. We'll see about that one. I might make my case there in the issue and update the milestone. Let's see. Joseph was here earlier and had an update on the next issue, which is the automated PHP CS code checks. It's issue 3213. He and Doc Wilmot are working back and forth just a little bit on this one. Or sorry, was it Doc Wilmot that he said? Can anyone remember?
Yeah. So I don't think we've had any involvement from Doc Wilmot yet. So he asked Doc Wilmot, because Doc Wilmot's the maintainer of the coder review module, what he wants to do about branch naming. There's also another issue somewhere else that BW Panda jumped in on, and we were brainstorming how to handle this, where there was another suggestion of moving the PHP CS integration out of coder review entirely into another project. And that could be the project that Joseph and Jeff can use for their work. And then coder review could include it, like bundle it like an external library. And then that way, if we need to make any additional changes to the PHP CS stuff, it doesn't get held up on what to do with the module. So to make things even more confusing, this is how Drupal's doing it now. PHPCS is an independent project, the PHPCS integration. It's still called Coder in Drupal. So there was also some ideas about like maybe we should rename it in Backdrop so it's not called Coder. So we'd have the same project Drupal has called Coder, but we might call it something a little bit more specific, like PHPCS integration, so people would know what it was. So yeah, there's been sort of a lot of discussion in the community about how we should handle this going forward. Like, what is the best position that would make the most sense going? And I think there is no consensus on that. So if anyone has any thoughts for how we should organize these projects, that might be helpful.
Just to further throw a wrench in things, because I love doing that. There's also automated code checks for JavaScript that we may want to implement at some point as well, because we have coding standards for JavaScript as well. PHP/CS only scans PHP files, and obviously that's the bulk of our code. But whenever we're adding JavaScript, it would be equally nice to have that syntax checked for our coding standards as well. So that might change things, as far as like if we want to have a new project that contains coding standards, it might eventually contain a set of JavaScript coding standards as well as the PHP/CS coding standards. And unfortunately, the syntax for those two things are entirely different. PHP/CS is a whole crap ton of XML. I think JavaScript coding standards checks are usually in JSON. So they're different. Yeah, it's different pieces of software.
So would that be something that you would want to manage separately from Coder? Or is it just something to consider in the landscape of the future?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think I was getting at that it would be sensible to me to have the coding standards for both JavaScript and PHP live in the same repository in the same project.
Even though they're different languages?
Yeah, because if we made a coding standards change that affected both of them, I would expect you'd want to make it both at the same time.
Okay.
Anyway, just a thought. Okay, next up, modals are not saving in source mode of CK Editor. It's issue 1259. I said last week that I'm volunteering to take a look at this, but I haven't had a chance to do that yet. So 1259 still needs work figuring out. We know where the root of the problem is, but we don't know the solution yet. So that needs some eyeballs, or not some eyeballs, needs some knowledge there. So 1259 currently needs pull request. Let's see, this whole section of the almost done issues seems like we've gotten into it where maybe they're not quite as done as we had hoped because we keep having these same issues up week after week. But here's, we can start going through this list of almost done issues. First one is set a reasonable max input vars. That's a PHP setting that Backdrop doesn't do well if you have a lot of permissions and the value of this is set too low, which out of the box is 1000. See, there's some comments here about, oh, the documentation page. That's right. That the documentation page maybe needs a couple of edits, but I think the code itself, like we can make changes to the documentation page after merging. So I'm not sure if this one actually needs work. It's the documentation that needs work. Jen, do you recall what needs to be done here?
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Which issue?
It's not critically important. The max input vars one.
I think it just
says
needs
that
it needs a reroll. There's a couple of issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next up is removing the block title from the search box. This one is also marked needs work because it looks like BW Panda, when he tested it, he couldn't actually get it to demonstrate the new behavior. So maybe another review on that could help, that possibly BW Panda missed something obvious, or possibly it's not actually applying the fix at all. It's a little bit unclear. HerbDuel was the last one to touch it, and he said that he has applied fixes. So I'm guessing that it works for HerbDuel, but not for BW Panda. Okay, let's see. Next up, there's an issue to fix the OR behavior when you have multiple filters applied inside of views. The issue number is 3415. This one needs some review and testing. It's currently a cross-port from some functionality from Drupal 7 views that should be suitable to fix the problem. Let's see. Next
Can I
up.
ask a quick question about that? Because there's another issue about just cleaning up the appearance of that filter. And I noticed that the views groups, either between them has to be all or and. You can't have or and. And that seemed weird. That's not, is that what this issue is about or not?
This is about just oring filters together. So it's not about grouping ors versus ands, but you should be able to group ors and ands within views.
Well, if you have three groups, right? The selector between the groups, there's sort of a UI discussion going on right now, and I didn't know this issue existed, and it might be unrelated, but the UI shows like a selector for and or between each of the groups, but in reality, if you change one, it changes all of them. And that seemed weird to me, but I think Jason checked and he said, oh, it turns out that Drupal does the same thing. So apparently that's an old issue, but it's kind of weird, and I don't know why it is. But... Okay, if this is not related, we can put this off because it's not.
I think we have a separate issue for that, though, right?
I don't know. I don't know of an issue. That's why I brought it up now, because I saw this one. I'm not sure if that's a. I don't know if there's an issue because I don't know if it's a bug or if that was the way it's supposed to work. But...
Yeah,
I just recall it being mentioned. Yeah.
Well, thinking off the top of my head, I can see why it might do that. That if you have multiple groups, say you have 3 different groups,
right,
and you change the option from and to or, it changes all, the or between all of them to or, and that would be possibly because unless you have another level of nesting, the operand order starts getting really confusing, like the and versus the or. If you have them all in the same level, I mean, we know that and runs before ors do, but
so yeah,
that's confusing.
In code, you'd put brackets to group them, but you can't do that in the UI. So it assumes that the whole thing is in a single bracket, and it doesn't make sense to have ors and ends between. Yeah, I get that.
I'll put the issue in the chat, but it's not something we need to talk about now any further.
Okay. Thanks for bringing that up, though. It's an interesting thing that could use some thought.
Well, it's just relevant to a UX patch. That's just the appearance of that page. So.
Let's see. The next 2 issues are attempts to remove some sensitive terminology from core: blacklist, whitelist, master, and slave. The issue numbers are 4441 and 4451. And looks like there's some additional discussion going on here in the first one, 4441. Just commentary about whether or not the effort is actually worth it. But I'm not going to rehash that here. I think that's the discussion is pretty good in the issue, and I don't think we need to go over it again. But we do still have some challenges in doing the implementation, that in some places this may affect APIs in some places because it's built into the name of some functions. So I think that this first one, 4441, is back to needs review. So that's where we are on that one. I haven't had a chance to take a look at it recently. And the one of masters and slaves,
failing tests.
It's failing tests, yeah. And I left some feedback on that pull request as well. It looks like it needs to be addressed. So that one needs some work.
Before we move to the 117, there's 2 issues that are at TBC for 116.3. and they've been waiting for 2 weeks. So one is 4481.
I'm pulling it up.
And it's about the link onto autocomplete suggestions styling.
Oh, right. Yeah. I like this one.
Yep. And the other one is a bug, actually. So it's 4527. And it's about an issue with displaying images in the image library. So that's TBC as well. Should we add that to the list, or you think we're gonna get to them over the weekend?
Yeah, let's. Yeah, I can get to them shortly. So
Yep. Okay.
yeah, I don't think they need rehashing since they're both RTBC. They don't really need anything at this point, it looks like. Okay, we can add them though. If I find something and ding it, then we can put it into the almost done list.
Yeah, they were just mention them because they're sitting as RTBC for 2 weeks. That's all. Yeah.
Okay, so anything else for 116? Okay, so 117, its feature freeze is September 1st, and release will be September 15th. This year is a little bit different. The past several years, actually, September 1st has fallen on Labor Day, a holiday in the United States. It didn't happen this year. Labor Day is instead September 7th. So for the first time in like several years, we'll actually be having feature freeze on September 1st, which is Tuesday, actually. Interesting. So that's basically just things are going to proceed as planned there. There is no postponement of the code freeze this year, or for this release. And
yeah, freeze is the first Tuesday, right?
Yep, that's right. And like Tim and Greg have mentioned in passing, we are planning, at least I'm planning on doing a little extra push over the weekend. I'll set aside some time to do code review on the issues that are currently slated for 117, which are pretty minimal. So I'm optimistic that we can get a couple of these knocked out.
Yeah, I think that we should focus, everyone that's doing weekend, we should focus on the tickets that are tagged for minor and the 117, the ones that have been milestone, because the ones that are for 116, we can do it in the next couple of weeks until we have the final release. I'm not saying neglect those, but yeah, focus on the ones that are on the minor.
Yep, that's right. I agree. So the first issue that we have here is this issue for layouts, adding support for custom contexts, issue 3750. I took a look at this one. Doc Wilmot has been leading the charge on the code, and he's the advocate for it. Everything inside of this issue worked exactly the way I would expect it to. Functionality-wise, it does exactly what it says it does, and it makes it so that you can take any layout that doesn't have any context at all, say like the homepage, and add the context of a user or a node or a taxonomy term. So if you wanted to pull out profile information from user number 1, you could do that by adding user number 1 as a context to the homepage or any other fixed path page. So it looks really good. It works really well. My feedback in it is that it has some small changes to the API regarding how contexts are loaded. And I think that those changes are avoidable. And I have some suggestions in the issue 3750. So I'm hoping Doc Wilmot will come back in and make those changes. But if we don't see any change by the weekend, I may file a pull request to, or push a change to the pull request that make those backwards compatibility changes. And then we'll need a review from someone else to double check that that's all okay. It would really be great if if Doc Wilma can come back in and take a look at them though, because I don't really want to be making changes to something that he's put a lot of effort in without getting his approval on it. But that one is looking really good. I don't see any reason why we can't have that completed before this weekend, because it doesn't seem as though there's any substantial problems with the implementation. And it works great, and it has tests. So yeah, we're in really great shape on 3750.
So last week we talked a little bit about, like, we don't want to hold this up because the UI is hard, but on the other hand, the UI is confusing, and like we talked about options for like hiding the UI, like not completely, but maybe in a field set or something for now until it's improved. And again, I don't remember if we sort of settled on anything last week, but that's also an issue that I don't know if like that part would have to be resolved by Tuesday to get this in, or if we could still just tweak the like what to do with the UI.
Yeah.
Again, not trying to make it perfect, but just trying to make it the least confusing as possible.
Yeah. I wonder where is that discussion happening in that issue about the UI?
Well,
confusing?
It originally came up, and then I sort of totally didn't understand it, so I just backed off of it. But we did talk about it during the meeting last week. So
okay, yeah, I'm unsure about that because I don't find it confusing, but I mean, I wrote a lot of the modules, so and I'm familiar with Drupal 7, and so yeah, so I need feedback from other people in order to understand the confusion there. And yeah, I don't know how to hide it, honestly, because
I was thinking as simple as a field set, so it's not completely hidden, but it's just not sort of in your face.
yeah, would you put permissions in there too? Because it has a similar level of prevalence on the page.
I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, I might need to just see if that actually makes it feel any better.
I'll try it. Can we, like, I don't know if I should talk about this in the same issue or if we should already open a new issue to just deal with this, even though I'm just looking at a temporary solution.
Yeah, I think, well, we could continue discussing it until this one gets merged, but I think this issue will get merged and then closed in the near future. So it might be better to separate it out into another one. Or continue the conversation until it gets closed.
Okay.
But then, you know, that's just kicking the can down a little bit.
Yep.
Okay, let's see. Next up, removing the view administration theme permission is issue 4487. I haven't had a chance to look at this one recently. Looks like Indigo Zella is tried to take a look at it. Jen, you filed the pull request and made a contrib module. Awesome. But Indigo Zella says that it's currently failing tests. So it's possibly not really worth them taking a look at it yet.
Yeah, I was a little concerned that when I removed the code from core that nothing, like not enough changed. So I'm like, there's got to be something in here that's using this that I haven't found yet. And then the tests failed and I'm like, yep. So.
Well, sometimes like the tests are there specifically because core isn't using the functionality. And so you have to have tests. You have to have tests to make sure that it doesn't break if something else was using it. Yeah. Okay, great. Next one up is BW Panda's issue. He's advocating for securing the config directories with htaccess. So this is a security hardening issue, number 706. And this adds the same protection that we use on files directories, like the private files directory, applies that protection to config directories. It's a pretty simple change since we're already using htaccess to protect other directories. It's just adding the same htaccess file to the config directory. It's much simpler than I would have expected, actually. Tuheen, you and I have both been commenting on that issue today, I think. And I think that I said it in the issue, but I'll say it again here, that it's a good idea for us to pursue this for the users of Apache. But the approach of securing the files with file permissions is something that we should also look at, that we can separate out and have another discussion about that approach as well, which would work on other systems that aren't Apache based, or for Apache users that don't have htaccess turned on.
I would like to hear from George for these comments.
Hear from George?
Who's George? You mean Greg?
Craig, myself.
About securing htaccess. So what you are thinking about this issue?
So are you referring to me though? Because you said George, you mean me, right? Or not?
Yes. You.
Oh, so yes, I know that Nginx doesn't support it. It doesn't mean that this is going to be the only sort of like measure of security that we have in place. It's just that for people that do use Apache, this is going to be an improvement. It doesn't break things for Nginx, and we don't solely rely on that. We have the hash in the config directory, and people can move it outside the Docker. So I think this is a good addition. It's something that we should do. Now, if there's an equivalent thing that we can do for Nginx, yes, let's do that as well, but a separate issue.
Yeah, we added some changes that differ from Drupal 7 as well, that Drupal 7 adds htaccess files all over the place, no matter what. And we added web server detection to Backdrop at one point that can detect whether or not you're running Apache. And if you're not running Apache, it doesn't bother making those htaccess files all over the place, because it doesn't want to give you a sense of these things are protected when they're not. And so if you're not running Apache, it just doesn't make the htaccess files at all. It kind of says, you're a little bit more on your own. But that's always been the case with Nginx, because like clean URLs, you have to configure the web server in Nginx. There's no way that Backdrop can provide the clean URLs functionality, because Nginx doesn't read any configuration files. So Nginx is already in a place where if you're using it, it requires configuring the web server in a special way.
Also, what about the, let me finish. What about the file permission 444? If configure, if it's possible to make configure file 444, it's also secure.
Yep.
But if we need to write, then it's be a problem.
Yep. Yeah, we have an old issue about settings.php. The Drupal 7 locks down the permissions on settings.php. And we changed the way that works. It would be good to go and take a look at that issue, to revisit it, to see some past discussion about the same thing, about setting file permissions inside of Backdrop, because I know I've posted some thoughts about how it might not really be very effective, but we can take a look at that again. And but I do think that we should have this as a separate, let's talk about file permissions as a separate issue. Okay.
I had one question. Do we have any idea what the usage is on Apache versus Nginx? I just did a little bit of Googling, and it looks like there's generally more Apache usage for smaller sites and more Nginx usage for bigger sites. But I'm not entirely sure that you can tell what web server people are running just by scraping the internet. I know there are a bunch of hosting providers that use both, and I don't know what that would show up as. So.
Well, if we had telemetry, we would know, right?
Well, we would.
Yes.
Well, if we're able to detect it. I mean, could we detect on Pantheon or Acquia that it's running both?
Well, I can, an anecdote, I just did sort of a security check of one of the sites on my server, and the security check told me that I was behind in my Nginx updates, which I fixed. So apparently they can tell which.
So what Backdrop would do if we used some kind of telemetry is it would be concerned about the lowest layer. So if in the case of like Pantheon, where they have both, Backdrop would say you're using Apache because htaccess is being respected. And the fact that Nginx is in front of it doesn't really matter to the application.
Okay.
But I think that is the level that we need to know anyway. It's like, what's running Backdrop? Is it Nginx or is it Apache? And if you put something else in front of Apache, it's not Backdrop's problem anymore because Apache's there.
Okay.
Yes, what about Lightspeed? Because here is another player is Lightspeed also.
Yeah. But
htaccess
the
works
two,
fine, but we have to make it's using Lightspeed or Nginx or Apache, everything. So if Lightspeed, htaccess works fine, no problem.
yeah. So officially we support only Apache, right? And then we say that Nginx works as well. So yes, web server Apache recommended or Nginx, and then we have a detail. I'm talking about the official requirements.
You know, do we have a documentation page on Nginx?
Yes. So if you, I just posted a link on the chat in Zoom, which points to backdropcms.org/requirements. And if you go to the web server section, Nginx has a details link. So if you go there,
This formatting
yeah,
on
just
it is a little bad.
yeah, just recommendation for clean URLs, nothing else.
Yeah, it might be appropriate to say, you know, that you can also secure your directories like in a particular way with Nginx, but I don't know if that's redundant because we already tell people you should move the config directory out of the web root, and that solves the problem in a different way.
Not everybody has that option.
The capacity, yeah.
Yeah.
But if they're running Nginx, because you have to be able to modify the server configuration of Nginx
In order to run Backdrop.
in order to run Backdrop on Nginx. So, you know, they probably have that permission, but I don't know. You're right. Like, it's a
I
little,
don't know of any shared hosts that run Nginx in a way that you would have any interaction with them. Like usually
Right.
it's you get control over Apache and your htaccess files, but yeah. And you often get access to directories outside public HTML, even with shared hosting. So
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the next issue since we're running out of time here. This is a newish one for 117, add support for lazy loading images. And this is through the new HTML. What's the attribute called?
Attribute.
Loading? Loading equals lazy
Loading.
yeah.
attribute. I only saw this today, so my feedback might not be super valuable, but I did read through and saw that Olaf was thinking along the same lines as myself that, you know, if we blanket, so the way that the implementation is right now, it adds an option to the performance page checkbox saying, use lazy loading for images, and it just adds the lazy attribute to every thing that runs through theme image on the whole site. And my concern is that I'm not sure that we really know what that will do. You know, like how effective that will be.
So it increases your Google ranking, even if it doesn't make your pages faster.
But does it also like improve the
make
user
also faster.
experience? You know, like
Yes.
if you just add lazy to everything.
Yeah. It depends. It depends on any
It's
given
not
site.
only Google ranking, it's also make website faster too.
Yes. Not faster, but for example, on mobile devices, it will load the page faster because if people are on slow networks, it helps them because it doesn't load unnecessary images before they can see something.
And it does load
So
what
it's-
you can see. So it doesn't really affect the user because it's only talking about the part of the page you can't see.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I need more
Information.
more evidence, more studying, you know, like to go forward with it. It seems like, you know, that there are 2 links to some, like, here's a general overview of it. But those articles didn't specifically say you should turn this on for absolutely everything. It just said you now have these options to do these things. But, you know, I have a feeling that it might seem like a good idea, but it might turn into be a bad idea later.
So would you be happy if it was off by default on news sites and we left it as an opt-in, and maybe at a later point we set it for news sites to on? Would that?
Because if we did that and then it did turn out to be a problem, we can always file another fix that like modifies it.
Yeah, I want to figure out if having it be a global option is where it needs to be. Like,
But what if we start it with a global option, and then if it turns out it's not right, then we also add more control over where it appears.
right, but
Yeah.
then would having a global option be something that we couldn't remove, but was a bad idea to even have in the first place later?
We can remove it in 2025.
So the thing is that it doesn't add on all images loaded on the page, right? It only adds it to user uploaded images. So it won't affect the theme images or whatever bits might be important. It usually will benefit people that are creating gallery nodes, for example, that upload 10 images or things like that.
Yeah, it'll affect image fields. Now that I think
Yes,
about it,
and
I
the
don't
CK
even think
editor.
it will affect CK Editor, because CK Editor just uses an image tag. It's just in the source. It doesn't run through theme image.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that would be one of the most valuable places to have it apply, is inside of the body field, you know,
CK
on
editor.
that content. So that could also be a little confusing, that the checkbox, a lot of people might say it isn't working if it doesn't actually apply to stuff that's in the body field.
Okay. All right. I'll see. I'll check that.
Yeah,
It can be a follow-up for CK editor. Yes, sorry.
I thought it did work on CK Editor. I thought CK Editor used theme image to generate the markup that it's stuck in.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
ID. But
it might if you're using a caption.
Yeah.
But I don't think it does if it's just an
not.
image tag.
Okay.
Hmm.
Can check.
But I don't know. It also seems like an easy win if it doesn't cause problems in the future.
Well, we don't even know if it causes problems in the future until the future.
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
I also like we have this meta issue that's like make Backdrop perform better out of the box in Google PageSpeed rankings, because right now it does a whole bunch of stuff that just, it doesn't matter how fast your pages load. It's like you get a bad SEO score if you're using Backdrop, and this helped that. And so I was like, oh, I found something that's going to make Backdrop perform better. And so immediately I was like, we should do this. I did it. So right now I have overridden theme image on 5 of my sites where I override all of the stuff in theme image. And so far there's been no repercussions. It is not the future. It is still the present. So I don't know if there's going to be problems in the future, but so far it's been great. So I don't know. I'm biased. I like it. It's working for me.
And how long ago did you do that, Jen?
When did I create the issue?
Oh, that one
Let's
you
see.
I like in the Google Doc, everyone is clicking on this link. There's like 5 little cursors over this right now.
So I did it April 2019. So it's been more than a year.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that seems a relevant data point.
Yeah, and back then it was only supported by Chrome, but then Firefox supported it, and now Safari is also in the works. There was a bug report which is marked as fixed, and then a follow-up or two. But browsers that do not support it just simply ignore it. So
all right. Anything else that we should discuss on that one? Yeah, I'm not like throwing up a block on it. I'm just saying I've got concerns. That's all.
worst case scenario, should we add it and have it disabled by default?
Well, worst case scenario is that we wouldn't add it as global option. But
And
as an intermediate scenario, yeah, we could include it out of the box as an option that was disabled. Yeah.
Yeah, so if we weren't adding it as a global option, would you expect it to be per field then?
I'm not quite sure yet. There's a lot of places we could add it. We could add it per field. We could add it in image styles. You could say like, if you use this image style, the lazy attribute is always added. Or you could even make it so that you could use that. What was the opposite one that is like, instead of lazy, there's like aggressive?
Eager.
Eager, yeah. So then you could have an image style like for hero, for example, that you always set to eager, because like when you're using an image of this size, it's always up at the top of the page,
But that would be redundant.
That was no, it's not. So Tim will disagree because he's created pages that have multiple hero images all over the page. So some sort of
Or if you have a
what is it called?
slideshow, like
Parallax.
you only want the first one to load, you don't want the second one to load eager.
Yeah, I don't know. So maybe it wouldn't be the best spot then. I don't know where the right.
But also if
places.
it's a hero and it loads right away, it's going to be eager anyway because it's already in the view.
Yes. Yep.
Well, yeah, that's the part that I don't fully understand how the browser behaves there. I think that if it's eager, the image might be prioritized over, say, like JavaScript files. But if it's lazy, it might wait till all of the JavaScript files before loading the image. So there's like
from what
that sort of thing.
From what I read, lazy actually triggers the image loading when they're in viewport. That's what it does.
So it won't load it
So
all.
yes, so it defers the loading of the image until it's in the viewport.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't prioritize. It doesn't mess with priorities. Just defers image loading.
Well, it might be interesting. It's been noted in that issue several times that Backdrop's hero images aren't affected by this anyway because they're loaded as a background image and not via an image tag, which could be good, that they are typically at the top of the page and they don't get this defer thing on them right now anyway. But it could be interesting to specifically put an image above the fold, put lazy on it, and then use Chrome developer tools to see how the first paint is affected, if at all. Like if the image shows up later than it does with it not having the defer attribute on it, not having the lazy attribute on it, I mean.
So I've actually one of the articles that I shared has a video screencast of a page with like dozens of images vertically, and they have the browser inspector open, and as the person scrolls, it shows the resources being loaded.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that's what it does. But yeah, we can test.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Some more thoughts on that one. More feedback would be appreciated on issue 3659. Or I think what would be most, sure, if we can get a front end expert to provide feedback, that would be great. But if we can just find more references to where use of the attribute is appropriate, that would be the best thing, I think.
Okay.
I get how it works. It's like, where is it appropriate? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Last up is adding tokens for image styles. This is issue 3594. This is the building in of a contrib module, which I think is called image cache token. Yeah, that makes it so that tokens right now you can display an image, but using tokens. But if you're on an image field, this makes it so that you could also display a particular image style from that image field as a token.
Yep.
So pretty simple in concept. It's kind of a big set of changes. Issue 3594 currently needs review and feedback. Do you have anything to add, Jen? You're the advocate for it, right?
Yep. So this is something that I use all the time on all my sites, and I was always really frustrated that it felt like it was left out of 777. And so there's this contrib module you have to add, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. But I would love to get it to be just part of image styles and image module in Backdrop. Contrib
Cool.
module is working great.
Okay. Well, those are the issues that we have. Do you guys have any other issues you guys would like to discuss right now for 117?
If that lazy loading thing doesn't get in, while I was working on another issue, I needed to have the submitted by. See how we have the submitted by configurable for its content type? You cannot render there's no token for you to render the username as a link. And there's 2 issues for it on token field, and it's just 3 lines of code change, which adds basically a token that says node colon author colon link. Maybe I would get that in, advocate for that instead.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a useful addition and kind of complementary to the other token enhancements.
Yeah.
Okay. We also have the initiatives, but there hasn't been any update from Jeff recently on telemetry. There's no way that's going to happen substantially before next week. And Luke's theme development work is outside of core for the most part. So I don't think we need to rehash those 2 things.
Yep.
So if there's any last discussion or anything else, just general topics. Should we schedule a particular time
Yes.
for this weekend to say that this is going to be when we're doing a code sprint?
Yeah, I think we should. And also, I want to just quickly mention Backdrop Live. Backdrop Live registration is live. Backdrop-live.backdropcms.org.
Is there a reason why we don't have it just be live.backdropcms.org?
Yeah.
That was already in use. We had a live test and dev in there, and I wasn't sure if that was going to cause a problem or not. So Backdrop-live seems safer.
Okay.
I'm like, I don't know why live was set up. I don't remember. I don't know what could be using it. It did seem to just redirect to www. So I was like, it's probably safe, but I figured I didn't want to break anything that might have been using it. So
Yeah. I might suggest taking it over, but it's fine. Okay, so this weekend,
Okay.
anybody have any suggestions? I'd probably say I kind of like doing it during the day and not so much in the evening. So like Saturday day, I think would be a good time.
it is different depending on where you are on the planet.
Yeah, sorry. That's so
You
true.
like doing it on your day.
People here might disagree with you on that.
We're thinking a lot about that because of Backdrop Live. We're
Yeah.
trying to pay attention to that problem. But yeah, well, that's when we've done them in the past. It's been in the afternoon. It is when we have these meetings because like going into the evening does not help. Going earlier in the morning could help a little bit, but that's hard for me.
Yeah, well, Tuhin's in Bangladesh, so it's the opposite for him, right?
Bangladesh is 13 hours difference from me, so.
Oh, okay. Well, what I'll say for myself is that I'm committing to I'll be available during my afternoon, and maybe if everybody says they're available during the afternoon, well, we'll just miss each other. But
Right.
I'll put the time in.
Well, I think it's fair. And I mean, I think if Peter wanted to say like he's going to be available during his afternoon, then we could, people could do whatever works best for them. But I don't want to
Yeah.
volunteer. I don't want to
And
volunteer.
Peter's in Australia, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have round the clock core committers. That would be great. Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, everyone.
So, Nate,
Yeah.
really afternoon,
There
roughly what?
is couple of issue fixed out and figure out. That's good, and everything fine with Backdrop, and we are on track.
Great. All right. Anything else, Tim? You were saying?
I was just asking, afternoon for you, are you thinking sort of like, when does your afternoon start? That's what I'm asking.
Probably 11 a.m. Saturday to about 4 or 5 p.m. Saturday.
Okay. I just want
Pacific time.
a rough idea. That's helpful. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the interwebs. And this time next week we'll be post feature freeze. So see you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.